What if I told you that we could do so much more with the beginning of our children's book, all by being more intentional about how we begin our story? If you would like to capture your little reader's interest from page 1, this video is for you. Hi there, I'm Eevi, an award-winning children's author and ghostwriter over on eevijones.com and the creator of Children's Book University. I create videos specifically for children's authors, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my weekly videos. The very first sentence of a story can be really powerful. It can stick with us for days, weeks, and even years. We only have this much time to draw our little readers in and engage them in our story. And that's why we will want to make sure to begin our story with a hook, something that captures our readers' attention from the very first page. Effective commercials use hooks. Successful books of other genres use hooks. And so we will want to make sure we do too. So the number one goal we want to accomplish with the way we write our beginning is to hook the reader right away and make them wonder or think thoughts like, oh no, what happens next? Or, interesting, tell me more. Or, that's how I feel, I can't wait to read more. If we get any of these reactions after our first line has been read, then we have mastered the hook. So we will look at 8 fun ways or methods we can use to tickle our readers' curiosity and intrigue them enough so that they can't wait to continue reading our story. And one of these methods will work especially well with a book series if you have been wanting to write a book series. And in the very end, we'll also look at when in the writing process we should write the beginning of the story. Hint, it might not be at all what you think. So let's jump right in. Oftentimes what I see during my one-on-one feedback sessions, when writing their very first children's book, aspiring authors feel like they should have some sort of introduction first, where we are spending a bit of time explaining who our characters are, or perhaps where we are. But because children's books are usually so short, it's often best to jump right into the story without much of a long setup of the scene. Especially for picture books and children's books in general, there are so many ways we could jump right into our story. So let's look at a couple of different ways to do so, along with some fun examples. Opening method number 1 is to weave in the origin of our character. Now, I just suggested that we should jump right into our story, right? Without much explaining. However, if we can wrap our character's origin into an intriguing opening sentence or two, this might be a really interesting way to begin our story. Paddington Bear by Michael Bond is such a great example here. Here the story begins like this. Mr. and Mrs. Brown first met Paddington on a railway platform. As a reader, my first question is, who is Paddington? And so the next sentence reads, in fact, that was how he came to have such an unusual name for a bear, for Paddington was the name of the station. There's so much information packed into just these 2 sentences without spending too much time at all. We learn that there's a Mr. and Mrs. Brown. We learn that it's about a bear. We learn the name of the bear. We learn where they met, and we learn how the bear got his name. We learn so much right away in such a concise way. And notice too that despite learning about Paddington's origin, we still jump right into the story. So if we can wrap our setting up like this, it could make a perfect beginning for our story. So looking at our own story, we could ask ourselves, would there be a way for us to weave some background information into our opening sentence that would make little ones want to know what's on the next page? Opening method number 2 is to zoom into a specific setting. This method still somewhat sets up our story setting or scene, but does so without losing any momentum, meaning we are still jumping right into our story. Pippi Longstocking by Astrid Lindgren is one of my favorite examples here. Here the story begins like this. Way out at the end of a tiny little town was an old overgrown garden, and in the garden was an old house, and in the house lived Pippi Longstocking. So again, with just one single sentence, we learn so much, zooming all the way from a town into a house. So when looking at our own writing, could we perhaps begin with a bigger setting and work our way to a smaller one in order to help our readers get drawn into our story? Opening method number 3 is to introduce a problem right away. A great example here is the book An Account of the Gum by Adam Rex. Here the opening line reads this. That's the gum right there that you got there in your hair. There's no mention of where the gum came from or how it was unwrapped or whose gum or hair we are talking about in the first place. We may learn this later in the story, but as for the beginning, we're jumping right in. And as a reader, I'm hooked. I want to learn more. So again, looking at our own story, is there a problem to be solved that we could bring up right away that would help us capture our readers' attention? Opening method number 4 is to begin our story with a question. Here a great example is Charlotte's Web by Eevi White. Here we begin our story with this question right here. Where's Papa going with that axe? Right away, readers will have so many questions. This would definitely make me want to continue reading. Another great example here is the book The Iron Man by Ted Hughes, with this beginning right here. The Iron Man came to the top of the cliff. How far had he walked? Nobody knows. Where had he come from? Nobody knows. I love this example. Here the author could have stopped after that first sentence, but he didn't. Instead, he actually wrote out 2 questions readers might have had after reading that first sentence. Brilliant, because now our readers want to learn more. So when looking at our own story, is there a fun question we could ask to instantly capture our little readers' attention? Opening method number 5 is to begin our story with an unexpected statement, something we wouldn't normally expect to hear. This is one of my favorite ways to begin a story, and the book Unicorn Thinks He's Pretty Great by Bob Scher is a great example, because it begins with this sentence right here. Things are a lot different around here since that unicorn moved in. It's so sweet and simple, yet so intriguing, already sparking a whole set of questions that little readers will want to have answered. Imogene's Antlers by David Small is another great example. Here the first line reads this. On Thursday, when Imogene woke up, she found she had grown antlers. Who is Imogene? And why does she have antlers? This is such a fun and curious way to begin a story. An extra fun twist we could add here as well is to combine an unexpected statement like this with a very traditional one. Like Anne Brashar's book, The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, that starts off like this. Once upon a time, there was a pair of pants. This is a very traditional beginning. It's almost whimsical, while also begging the question why we are talking about a pair of pants, which again fosters curiosity from the very first line of our book. So looking at our own story, is there something unexpected we could say about it? Is there something that, when said, would be quite surprising to our little readers? Opening method number 6 is to begin our story by talking directly to our little readers. This is such an interesting way to begin our story, especially if it is written in first person and the reader is being talked to throughout the book already. Kristen Bell's book, The World Needs More Purple People, is a great example here, where a little girl starts off by saying this. Hey kids, I've got a secret. It's gonna knock your socks off. This is such an engaging way to begin our story. Little readers are drawn in right away, and their curiosity has been tickled right away, making them want to turn to the next page right away. Here we could take it even further and make it even more personal by making it seem like the girl is talking to just me alone by opening the book like this. Hey you, I've got a secret. It's gonna knock your socks off. So by changing just one word, we can instantly make it even more personal. So if our book is already written in first person, is there something we could directly say to our little readers to draw them in from the get-go? Opening method number 7 is to begin our story with something the reader can instantly agree with or also oppose. Little Woman by Louisa May Alcott is a perfect example here. Here the first line reads this. Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents, grumbled Joe, lying on the rug. This is something most young readers would immediately want to agree with, right? And so they'll be immediately invested. Another perfect example is The True Story of the Three Little Pigs by John Sciasca, with these opening lines right here. Everyone knows the story of the three little pigs, or at least they think they do. Here little readers will want to agree, but then begin to wonder, what if we don't know the story after all? All I needed to read was this first line to know that I wanted to read the story in its entirety. So is there something we could say at the beginning of our book that would make little readers nod and think, that's so true, or make them shake their heads and say, That's not true at all. And finally, opening method number 8 is absolutely perfect for a series. And that's to have the books in our series all begin the same way or with slight variations. The first couple of books in the Little Blue Truck series by Elise Shirtley are such a great example for a series of books that begins exactly the same. All of these early books in the series begin with the same verse. Horn went beep, engine purred, friendliest sounds you ever heard. Not only does using the same first verse help us tie our books together, but it also creates some sort of routine for little ones. And young kids love routine because they know exactly what to expect, which makes things seem familiar and safe. Reading other beautiful classics like Curious George by Margaret and H.A. Ray, for example, we will find the exact same thing, where each of these books begins with this little line right here. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. My 2 boys loved this first line when they were little. Another beautiful variation of this would be to begin the books of our series nearly the same, with slight variations. Aaron Blaby's Pick the Puck series is the perfect example for this. Here, each book begins with the same first 2 lines, but then ends that first verse differently. For example, the original Pick the Puck book begins with this verse right here. Pig was a pug, and I'm sorry to say, he was greedy and selfish in most every way. The book Pig the Stinker starts off with the same first 2 lines, but then ends with something that is more specific to that particular book. Pig was a pug, and I'm sorry to say, his personal hygiene was far from okay. This is such a sweet way to tie our series together even more. So if we have a series, could we perhaps come up with an opening line we can use over and over again? Now, when it comes to writing an intriguing beginning for our children's book, my number 1 ninja tip is this: write it at the very end. If you've watched my video where I share some tweaks to improve the ending of our story, you might remember that I like to write my stories beginning with my ending, meaning oftentimes I already know what I want my ending to look like. Sometimes it's just the overall picture, and sometimes I know exactly what words I'm going to use. I went ahead and added the link to that video in the description below. And I do the exact opposite with the beginning of my story. I write it or tweak it at the very end of my writing process, because that way it's easier for me to see the entire picture and it's easier to tie my intriguing beginning to the rest of the story. Now, there are so many creative ways how we could begin our beautiful story. The most important thing to remember is that we will want to be intentional about it. If our first line gets our little readers curious and gets them wanting to know more, then this line has achieved its goal. That's exactly what we will want our first line to do. So next time you browse through a bookstore or through your kids' bookshelves, pay attention to that first line. How do these books begin? What is it that drew you in? What is it that kept you reading? I really hope this video provided you with some fun examples to get your own creative juices flowing, to come up with your very own first line that helps you draw your little readers in from the get-go, getting them excited to turn to that next page. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. It really encourages me to keep making free videos for you just like this one. Here's to your very own ending that captures the interest of your little readers over and over again. Bye!